I am angry about people being angry all the time. Yes, we live in a divided country. Yes, we're at war with the pandemic. But what are you so angry about all the time with each other? Even our preachers are angry. The peacemaking meeting scheduled for today has been canceled because of a conflict in schedule. Aren't we supposed to be a joyful people? Whose image were we created in? We're created in God's image. And what does that mean? It means that we are to reflect Him, right? We're supposed to have relationships, right? Why? Because we weren't created to be alone. We weren't created to be in isolation. But after the fall, whenever we have relationships, it's inevitable that there's going to be conflict. So, what is conflict? Conflict is just generally a serious disagreement or an argument, typically a protracted one, i.e., the eternal conflict between men and women, between the sexes, right? That sort of reminds me of, I was talking to a gentleman who'd been married for 50 years, and he says to me, hey, I've only been in one argument with my wife the entire time. And I turned my head and I had to ask, what's the secret? And he goes, well, the fight started on my honeymoon, and I'm still waiting for it to end. It's a bad joke, but how does conflict arise? It arises because someone does something you don't like, you get into a disagreement, or there's a disagreement of opinion, a bad emotional state from one party, competition, clash of interests, different goals, aggression, frustration. There's an amalgam of reasons. But today, so anytime two or more are gathered, you're going to have what? Yeah, you're going to have conflict. No, that's not biblical or anything, but it's almost scientific. Conflict is inevitable, but how? The question is, how should you handle it? Should you get angry? I say that you should reflect the Lord even when you're angry. So yeah, you can get angry, but you should reflect the Lord even when you're angry. In the Bible, who was the first person who felt as though they were wronged? The first person to get angry? Cain. If you look at Genesis chapter 4, verse 1 through 8, it tells us the story of how Cain came into the world. Adam and Eve had their first son, first kid, Cain. And then they had their second, Abel. And as they got older, they nurtured their skills, and Cain worked the soil. He was a farmer. He was a farmer, like he planted vegetables and fruit. Abel was a man of the field. He farmed animals. So Cain gave fruits and vegetables. Abel gave of his flock the first fat feast of his flock, and the Lord shined favor to Abel. But Cain got angry with that because he didn't shine favor to Cain. Cain got angry. His face was downcast. Now, I've run a number of small companies in my time, and at one point I ran a small law practice. And so you kind of got to imagine that I'm used to conflict. I'm always talking around or trying to get to a destination with people. And I had to one day get on my son's case because he was getting on one of my daughters about something. He had lost his cool. He had lost his head. He was emotionally just all over the place. And he says to me, how would you like it if someone was always saying bad things about you? Because in essence, one of his sisters had told him he was lying. And I had to chuckle. I had to chuckle because I'm like, listen, if every time someone said something to me about me that I didn't like, that was bad to me or about me, I flew off the handle, I'd be under a jail somewhere. You've got to keep your head regardless of what people are saying or what people do. Keep your head. Stay cool, despite what people are saying, despite what people are doing to you. Okay, so that's just the quick and short, and we could stop it there. Keep your head. But it's not, obviously it's a little bit more complex. You should always reflect the Lord, even when you are angry. Now, does that mean you're not supposed to get angry? No. I think we have too many biblical examples of even God getting angry. God, Jesus. Moses got angry when he came down off the mountain and saw that his people had been building a golden calf. Right? Exodus 32:19. Rachel got angry at Jacob because she didn't bear him any sons, any children. David got angry with God because he killed Uzzah. Jesus got angry. He turned over tables in his anger when he walked into the temple, and he cleared it out. Psalm 7:11 tells us God judges the righteous, and God is what? Angry with the wicked every day. But aren't we told not to anger? Psalm 37:8 says, refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not for yourself, it tends only to evil. We are to refrain, which means to hold back, to keep from action, to curb. In Psalm 37, the subject, though, is the evil actions of people and other apparent the evil actions of people who apparently prosper. They accomplish nothing, though, when you get angry and you lash out. And as a matter of fact, you're doing is the opposite of what the Lord has challenged you to do, which is to seek him for your delight and patiently wait upon him. A hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention. The wise man or the woman is slow to anger, and they have a way of bringing peace and smoothing over contention instead of stirring up strife. Be slow to anger. Be slow to anger. If you type in anger management into Google, and you know everything that you find on Google is true, the first thing that comes up is 10 tips. 10 tips to tame your anger from the Mayo Clinic. And the first 4 of those 10 are think before you speak. Once you calm yourself, express your anger. Get some exercise and take a time out. Now, the list continues on, but of the first 4 of the top 10 tips, it's about doing something to distract yourself so you can get some time before you respond. Cool out, chill out, keep your head, get yourself composed. The first 4 responses to anger require you to do something which is, in essence, buys you time before you act on your madness, before you act on your anger. The woman says to a doctor, I don't know what to do. Every day, my husband seems to lose his temper for no reason, and it scares me. The doctor says, hey, I have a cure. When it seems though your husband is getting angry, just take a glass of water and start swishing it around in your mouth. Seems a bit odd, but just swish it. Don't swallow until he and don't swallow it until he either leaves the room or he calms down. A couple of weeks later, the woman comes back to the doctor all refreshed and reborn, reinvigorated, and the woman says to the doctor, hey, that was a brilliant idea. Every time my husband started losing it, I swished water in my mouth. I swished and swished and swished, and he calmed right down. How does a glass of water do this? The doctor chuckled, and he says, well, the water itself does nothing. It's you keeping your mouth shut that does the trick. What makes you angry? What makes you angry? How can you keep your temper down? How do you demonstrate your anger? How do you demonstrate anger? Do you simply just give in? You just indulge? But giving in may mean keeping silent about real issues. Bottling up hurts. It may fester ill feelings. How about, do you overpower? Do you force? Do you get violent? Do you curse? Do you threaten when you get angry? Do you always just compromise? Do you cooperate? I mean, those are all responses. What did Cain do? Well, I say that you're supposed to reflect the Lord even when you're angry because sin is right around the corner. Remember, sin is right around the corner if you stay in anger. Do you recognize the way you respond and how Cain responded? How did Cain respond? Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast is what the Lord asked him. If you do what is right, you will not be accepted. But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. The Lord said to Cain, you must master your anger. That is to take away from today. Ask yourself honestly, why are you mad? If you respond the right way, what bad is going to happen? If you succumb to your anger, sin is right around the door. Do not become a slave to your anger. Master it. Do not let your anger master you. You master it. Whatever type the anger is, you need to get it under control and get rid of it. Ephesians 4:27 says, if you don't control your anger, you give the devil a foothold, literally a place in your life. It's an open door saying, devil, come on in here so we can go get in something. So what did Cain do? God warned Cain about the consequences of his resentful attitude in the wake of his rejection. The clear indication is that if Cain would get it straight, his offering would be accepted by God. But sin was an ever-present jeopardy to Cain, just as it is to you and just as it is to me, and it's accentuated when we're angry. Cain shows that sin is always very much in the reach, ready to spring up within at any time. God warned Cain that sin is always ready to rise up and rear itself via jealousy or anger and consume to dominate one's actions. But Cain did not heed God's warning, and he allowed his anger, his jealousy to manifest itself in his murder of his own brother. Once Cain's offering was rejected by God, what choices did he have? What choices did Cain have? He could talk to God. He could storm away angrily. He could retaliate against Abel. He could tell his parents in authority. You have options. But you should reflect the Lord's light even when you are angry, because sin is right around the corner. Now, verses 8 through 13 tell us, now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked him. He attacked his brother Abel and he slew him. He killed him. And then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother? Like God didn't know, right? And Cain said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? That's where the line comes from. And the Lord says, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood. In other words, now, what you've done as a farmer is going to get a whole lot worse. You're going to have to toil. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. In other words, it wasn't worth it. When someone cuts you off on the road or takes your parking space, ignores you, does the opposite of what you ask or recommend or want, calls you out of your name, lies to you, what can you do? In line with God's challenge to Cain, what can you do? When God convicts us and deals with the sin in our lives, how do we respond? Do we seek to make things right? Or do we come before the Lord in worship and confession with a humble and contrite heart? Or do we pout? Do we stamp off, get ticked off, simply seek means to get our own way, to make it right for me, as opposed to making it right for everyone? Getting my way instead of the right way. That's what demonstrating anger is generally about, getting it my way instead of the right way. Now, sometimes those things may line up, but it should always be about doing the right way. Reflect the Lord's light, even when you are angry, because sin is right around the corner. Do you have a problem with your temper? One lady said, I occasionally lose my temper, but it's over quickly. So in other words, it's not a big deal. It's just short term. But her pastor replied, so is an atom bomb. And I think about the damage that causes. So is a cyclone. Think about the destruction that leaves. So is a bullet, but think about the death that it causes. We must not assume that unrighteous anger is ever justified or appropriate, no matter how long or short. Do you have a problem with your temper? Do you have a problem with anger? How did Jesus instruct us to deal with anger? How do you instruct us to deal with it? He told us how to deal with it in the Sermon on the Mount. And later in Matthew 18, he said, blessed is the peacemaker, right? Blessed is the peacemaker. But he told us that if we have conflict, we're supposed to bring it to the other offending party, whether you're offender or offendee. If your brother sins against you, go and show him his faults. Just the two of you, just between the two of you. If he listens to you, guess what you've done? You know, like two guys that fight and they duke it out, they respect each other. You've won over a brother. But if he will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter that you discuss is established as testimony. So you have 2 or 3 witnesses. And if he still refuses to listen, take him to the church. This is for the church goer. And if he refuses to listen, even to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. So some people get lost and take him to the church, take him to a tax collector. Frankly, if you've already discussed it with him and you've taken someone else to him and there's no getting, then you just leave them. You can love them and leave them alone. No matter which side has caused a problem, the solution is the same. First, go to the person with whom you are experiencing a challenge, a conflict, a problem, something that's potentially angering you, and address the issues face to face. Avoid, at first, involving third or fourth or the millions of people on the internet, your Instagram followers, what have you, because it's only going to worsen the problem for the offending or the offender. Such discussions tend to intensify conflict, furthermore undermining the relationship, which is the most important thing here. Judging from the amount of conflict experienced in the world, this is surely one of the most overlooked commands in Scripture. The goal must be to restore relationship more than proving oneself right. You can only do that by addressing it one-on-one, after genuinely thinking about how to reconciliate. Reconciliate. Here, Cain got angry. He let it fester. He killed his brother. He was punished. It was in the ground. So the ground he worked was punishment, more than he could bear. Acting out his anger was not worth it. It wasn't worth it. Is it ever? Reflect the Lord's light even when you are angry, because sin is right around the corner. So really, basically, what's the lesson here? Don't get angry? Nah. Don't get caught? Nah. Don't let it fester. Reflect the Lord's light because sin is right around the corner. Again, Jesus told us how to deal with it. And if we're supposed to reflect his image, we are supposed to reflect his image. What should you do when your wife gets on your nerves because she's on your case for not being able to read her mind, right? What should you do, ladies, when your husband does not seem to really be paying you any attention? When you are talking to him? What should you do when you get a bad review, a bad grade, you don't get a raise, or you need to give someone a bad review or a bad grade? What should Cain have done? So who are we to be? We're supposed to reflect God. Who was his total reflection on earth? Who was God's total reflection on earth? Christ. And we have a good example here in the Garden of Gethsemane. What did Christ do? When they came for him, he didn't run. He submitted to the Pharisees. And in the temple, he turned over tables. He dealt with the problem. He didn't let it fester. When he was confronted by the questions by the Pharisees and the Sadducees, he outwitted them. He was able to do the range of things because he was always focused on his purpose. What is your purpose? Is it to get your way or to get it right? It should be to reflect God. Are we reflecting God even when we're angry? Are you acting to soothe yourself or your wrath or reflect God's glory? Reflect the Lord's light even when you are angry because sin is right around the corner. It's not a one simple solution, but if you stay focused on what it is that he has charged you to do, your response can be varied, but it can't be wrong. Reconciliation over revenge. Reflect God's light. Reflect his glory when you get angry, even when you get angry, because sin is right around the corner.